Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. My name is Jason Hasty. If you want, feel free to use the question and answer section and let me know if you attended my newer user ProTax webinar that we had yesterday. Awesome. Brenda, I recognize your name. Jolene, yes. Marcos, nice. Christine, oh, that's awesome. Glad you guys were in attendance. Lee, Mary from Orangeville, awesome. Shannon, oh, this is awesome. Well, I hope you all get as much valuable information today, get as much out of this webinar today as you did yesterday. Hi, John from Calgary. Lorette, awesome. This is great. Thanks, Lorette. Roseanne. Beaumont, yes, I remember that. Nice to meet you, Joan. Okay, we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Hi, Debbie from Vancouver. Han, I remember you. I think, were you Regina or somewhere in Saskatchewan? I can't remember. Awesome, Rachel. Yeah, I knew it, Han. Saskatoon. I got it almost right. I lived in Saskatoon for many years. Love that city. Hi, Nikki from Vancouver. Masood. Ricardo. Oh, Vancouver Island. I bet it's a little bit greener out there than it is here in Calgary. Okay, we'll get started in about a minute and a half. Oh, awesome, Rachel. Yes, I love sunny days, especially in the Canadian winters. Okay, get started in about 30 seconds-ish. Yeah, good question, Anonymous. You said you attended the first course yesterday. Have a question. When you import your 2023 file to carry forward for 2024, what do you do with the 2023 file as it sits in the list in progress? I would say, I mean, if you've imported it and you've carried it forward to 2024, technically you can just delete that return. I think I talk about how to delete returns in today's webinar. If I don't, if you go to return actions when you're in the tax return and then click on delete return, you can delete that. Because if you've imported it, you'll have it in the other file format, unless you want to, archive it or something. It is kind of interesting because it does say yes when you've already filed it, assuming that you've already filed it previously. So yes, Nikki, I will talk about that as well. Okay, so on that note, let's get started with today's webinar. Share my screen. Take over from Randall. Thank you, Randall, for introducing the screen and the music this morning.
You got it.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. All right. Oops. Okay. So you should be able to see my screen now on the experienced user ProTax T1. Yesterday we did the new user T1 on ProTax, and today we're going to be doing experienced user. So it's kind of continuation of yesterday's webinar, and we go into more depth on some items. I'm going to try and talk faster today or go through things faster as well, as I kind of ran out of time yesterday. Again, my name is Jason Hasty. I'm a CPA CA. I got my CA way back in 2001, and I got my master's in accounting at the University of Saskatchewan in 2000. I'm also the founder of a cloud-based bookkeeping and accounting company called Tenja Go. Okay, so some information about today's webinar. It is an hour and 15 minutes long. It includes a mix of instruction and Q&A. So not necessarily just the 60 minutes of instruction and 50 minutes of Q&A. I just like to combine them, and feel free to use the question and answer section. The chat will be disabled for you, so you post your questions in the Q&A area of Zoom. And we have the awesome Luke helping us out today as well from Intuit on answering your questions. So questions that I don't get to answer in the webinar, Luke will answer those for you via typing the answers in the Q&A. Ricardo's asking about RSP spouse contributions. Yes, I talk about those today as well. Okay, and as far as the CPD certifications, handouts, you should have gotten the handout in the email. I think it was in the reminder email. That is the ProTax guide, and it's a pretty comprehensive guide. I have a part in writing/reviewing it. So it goes into a lot more depth of what we're going to be covering today. The CPD certifications will be emailed out to you after today's presentation. Please download them for your records and input that into your CPD tracker if your organization has one. Please limit your questions to today's webinar content as well. And again, just another slide on the CPD. Today's course is eligible for 1 CPD credit. And again, it will be emailed out to you after the presentation. If you have any questions or don't get it, start off by checking your junk mail. If not, then just reach out to Intuit so that they can send it your way. A disclaimer, as always, all information in today's webinar is for educational and informational purposes only. Please do not take it as legal or tax advice. This webinar, its contents, and myself, your presenter, are not to be relied upon for tax treatment of items reflected on tax returns. Okay, so it looks like a lot of you were here yesterday, which is awesome. I love seeing the continuity, and my hope is for you to learn as much about ProTax T1. And in addition to that, I've taken a lot of feedback from webinars I've done in the past, and I try to really incorporate a lot of the additional tax stuff, especially alongside the CRA and the electronic filing and being able to access your client's information. So I try to incorporate a lot of that into my webinars, along with the ProTax information to give you, as much as comprehensive as a tax preparation and filing webinar that I can make it. Muska has asked about getting yesterday's training recording. Yes, I believe it will be recorded, and I actually show you today where to go to find previous recordings. It's really easy on the Intuit Accountants Canada YouTube channel. Okay, so yesterday we talked about books to tax, the whole ecosystem that takes you all the way from doing your clients' books, if they are in QuickBooks Online, all the way to filing the tax return in ProTax. To file a tax return in ProTax, your clients do not need to be on QuickBooks Online, so it's not essential. It does just in some ways make it easier. T1s are a little bit different because if your client isn't a self-employed individual and you're just preparing a T1, then it's not as necessary to have the books to tax because you're not looking at those revenue or income and expenses that pull forward through into the business activity statement, which is the T2125 of the T1 personal tax return. So not as necessary. We did an introduction to ProTax, things like why would you want to use ProTax, how to buy it, what tax years it covers. We'll talk a little bit about those very briefly today as well. How to get help, really important to be able to get help when you need it, when you are working on ProTax. And Intuit has built in many different ways that you can access and get help when working on ProTax. Setup and navigation, we talked about importing T1 files, and then we looked at a basic T1. Okay, and to kind of talk about the previous webinars and where you can get those recordings, where you can access information on them, as well as many videos. If you go to the Intuit Accountants Canada YouTube site, that's where I've pulled this screenshot from. So just youtube.com, you can look for the Intuit Accountants Canada. That's where we have a lot of these webinars, many that I've taught, as well as others that have taught a lot of the webinars relating to ProTax, as well as other Intuit apps and programs. Here we're on the home screen. You can click on the videos to get a full comprehensive list of the videos related to many of the different apps with Intuit. So again, a ton of videos for you to see and some really great training tools. Training access for you in QuickBooks Online Accountant. So QuickBooks Online Accountant is your central resource of where you handle all of your the database of your clients, whether or not they're on QuickBooks Online. It also is the database or the area where ProTax lives. It's all in QuickBooks Online Accountant. If you don't have a QBOA or QuickBooks Online Accountant account, you can sign up for one absolutely free of charge. There is no monthly fee. There is no charge to sign up. You become a pro advisor through it. You can do all your training. And again, it's kind of that central hub for your client database. No cost again. And to find it, you can just Google QuickBooks Online Accountant. Make sure you are on the Intuit or the QuickBooks website when you're signing up for it. Very easy to get signed up. Once you have that account, you will then see when you are logged into it, on the left-hand side, it'll show the QB Accountant. And then within that, that's where you can access your Pro Advisor benefits and training. The training includes a lot of the videos and the webinars, especially the upcoming webinars. So, yesterday I kind of pointed at the end of the webinar how to sign up and register for today's webinar. So that's where a lot of those parts live. Very easy to access it. As you can notice, below the Pro Advisor area is ProTax. So that's how you access ProTax within the QBOA environment. Okay, so purchasing ProTax. I went over this yesterday as well. So just briefly, ProTax works on a subscription basis and an annual subscription basis. So once you purchase the module or a bundle or a suite of modules, then that gives you access to file unlimited returns within that module or those modules that you purchase, unlimited returns for a full year. And that is for yourself or anybody in your firm or organization who is on your QBOA account that you give access to. So unlimited returns for, I think it's an unlimited amount of users with your firm or your organization. A lot of really amazing benefits in the collaboration side of your users and things like that. I will go into that a little bit more in depth. If you were just trying out ProTax, or you have maybe just one trust return. So for example, in the T3, Intuit now allows you to do the one pay option, so you can purchase one return filing at a time. Okay, so what tax years does ProTax cover? Today we're talking about the ProTax T1. It goes all the way back to 2018 and all the way up to 2024. So the current tax season, which is 2024 T1s, that season actually opened just yesterday. So the CRA opened every year. The CRA closes their portal from about January 31st to February 24th-ish, as in yesterday, so that the CRA then can roll forward their system and open it up to the current year filing. So that opened as of yesterday. So now you have the ability to e-file those tax returns for 2024. Just something to note when you're filing 2024 tax returns, I actually like to wait a little bit longer before starting to file T1s, simply because T4s and T5s filings, those are due on February 28th. So sometimes those returns don't come into the CRA prior to the end of February, because employers don't have to, the deadline is February 28th. And then if you are using something like Autofill My Return, which we will be talking about more in depth today, then all of that information comes in instantly for you. So, it's up to you, but I usually like to leave it kind of till mid-March to start filing T1 tax returns. I think that was it for that side. Oh, yes, I wanted to also say very briefly, ProTax T2, that's corporate tax returns. ProTax goes all the way back to 2015 and is current as 2025. So if you have corporate fiscal year-end clients that end in 2025, you can file those T2s as well through ProTax. Okay, so we talked about books to tax yesterday. Just a really quick highlight, and I'll be going to some areas more in depth today, and then a little bit more of an in-depth live kind of navigation for you today in the books to tax. Yesterday, we talked about books to tax. This is the ecosystem that allows you to look at your clients' QuickBooks Online files and do either periodic, like monthly checkups, or year-end preparation. So the year-end finalizing for your clients' year-end, including possible financial statement preparation, as well as the income tax filing for your client tax returns. Note, I can't stress this enough because people get it confused with, well, where do you see it? Why don't we see books to tax? When you are in books to tax, this component, your client has to be on QuickBooks Online for you to access the books to tax for them. You can still create a tax return for them if they're not on QuickBooks Online. But if you're doing the books to tax functionality, which is like the monthly checkups or the year-end financial statement preparation, work papers, that client has to be in QuickBooks Online to access books to tax. The way you access it is when you are in that client's QuickBooks Online file. As we can see, the client here is called CCPC Sample Company. So that's that indicates to you that you are in that client file. That drop down there is the one that'll show you all the clients that you have that are in QuickBooks Online. Once you are in that client, on the left-hand side, you will see that books to tax option. Okay, so today's webinar, what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about the T1AFR, which stands for Autofill Return, or Autofill My Tax Return, or Autofill Your Client's Tax Return. Super handy service and stops you having to do manual entry based on all of the information that the CRA has for your client. So we'll talk about being able to use that functionality within ProTax and how you can get access to be able to look at and use that function, look at your client's data that the CRA has and use that functionality, because you do have to get authorized from your client. You have to get each client to give you authorization for them to be able to access their information that the CRA has for them. So we'll start off with that. We'll look at coupled returns, so spousal returns and toggling back and forth between them, and how you can apply tax savings to make it as efficient as possible when you're filing tax returns for couples, because you want to maximize their tax credits, obviously. Adding on to that, dependents, so how you can link dependent returns to a taxpayer's return in ProTax. Talking a little bit more about the tax savings and the tax efficiencies. We'll talk about pension splitting for clients and the amazing tool that's built into ProTax that you can split pensions and optimize that pension splitting to save your clients the most in tax. We'll also be looking at some ProTax productivity tools. And then we'll also look at a T2125 from QuickBooks Online Accountant. So that is your self-employed clients that need to file business activity returns within their personal tax return, their personal T1. How that works in Books to Tax, how you can carry that forward into ProTax, and some helpful productivity tools built directly into that with the Books to Tax environment so that you don't have to do manual entry. So let's start out with the T1 autofill your return. Okay, so to be able to autofill a client's tax return, what that does is that allows you within ProTax to automatically access the CRA portal and bring in all of the information that the CRA has on your client, such as T4 information, T5 information. It shows balances owing from the past history, helps you to verify the client's address, a ton of things that are really, it's a huge a huge time-saving thing for you so that you don't have to manually enter those T4s, T5s, all of that when you are entering information into ProTax. All of that information comes in automatically and you can view and I'll talk about the data import summary screen that you will get when ProTax imports all of that information. So to be able to do that, you need to have a rep ID with the CRA. So you need to register through Represent a Client with the CRA, and then you need to get access from your clients, from each client, to be able to file or to access their information. So a number of ways that you can verify your identity when you're registering for Represent a Client. This screenshot gives you a little bit of information. If you want to just Google CRA Represent a Client, make sure you are on the Canada.ca website. When you Google it, you want to ensure that you are on the CRA's website, not any spoofed website, etc. Then you can apply for the Represent a Client. Now, there are two electronic service offerings, I guess you'd call them, from the CRA. There is the Rep ID and the Represent a Client, and then there is the e-file. So the ability to be able to e-file tax returns for your clients. Those are two separate things, and you have to get authorized for each of those separately. ProTax has e-filing ability built into it as well. So I'll go through that as well a little bit today. I went through it in some detail yesterday. So if you want to access my previous webinar from yesterday, you'll get more information on that. Okay, Ricardo is asking, can I use my business number instead of Tech Rep ID? Yes, that is correct. You can, if your business number is linked through for you, you can use your business number instead of your the 6-character whatever rep ID that you get. If your business is registered with multiple users as well, I believe that each of those can apply, or you can apply for them for an e-file number as well. So there's a couple of things there that gives you some flexibility in the ability to add your business number instead of your rep ID. I believe, if you are wanting to use your business number, you have to have a rep ID first, and then your business number can be attached to that. The CRA this year has simplified the sign-in. So at Tenja we ask all of our clients to open up a CRA My account, which allows them to go in and access all of the information that the CRA has on them. In addition, it allows them to give you authorization through their own portal. So that's a really quick and easy way for them to give you authorization. As well as if they have a business, they can also register their CRA My Business account. So as you can see on this screen, this is myself, for example. It shows 3 different areas. So I'm registered under my own name and my social insurance number on the CRA portal. I have a rep ID myself, so you can see that in the representative little box there. And I also have a business idea, a CRA My Business account. So the CRA has wrapped all of that into one login now. Once you log in, you can access those 3 areas through that one login. So it makes it a lot easier versus before where you had a separate login for a rep ID, separate login for my account, and a separate login for my business account. Afifa's asking, can we file our own tax in QBO, or can we file only for clients in business? So yes, you can absolutely do. Now you can do it for your own as well. I think the process is, I believe the books to tax is now open in QBOA for your own firm's tax return. So what used to happen, let me jump back a step. With QuickBooks Online Accountant, it gives you the ability to have your books for your firm in QBOA. And again, that is absolutely free. So you can do all the bookkeeping for your own firm within QuickBooks Online Accountant. It's absolutely free. You then use the books to tax function to export the Giphy file into ProTax. I think that's the way that you get around filing your own firm's tax return, or your own, if you're sole proprietor or self-employed, in ProTax. So it works, I believe, a little bit differently than for clients, but yes, absolutely, you can file your own tax return in ProTax. Okay, Amanda, software question. Did the checkbox for change address get removed for 2024? I'm not sure on that one. Perhaps Luke knows that and can answer that for you. Amanda, if we're not able to answer that for you today, I will show you where to access help in ProTax. Really great help resources. Again, there's the chat ability, there's the ability to call ProTax for support. So if you don't get your question answered today, feel free to reach out to Intuit through that. You can access the ProTax help when you are in a client's tax return, and it's the blue bubble at the bottom right-hand area. Okay, Catherine, any functionality differences should I be aware of being used to profile? So technically, ProTax is now the same as Profile, just in the cloud-based format. I believe almost all of the, I'm pretty sure all of the, don't quote me, all of the schedules are available now in ProTax. I know ProTax doesn't have all of the Quebec forms or the Quebec ability, I believe, that Profile does. For the rest of you, what Profile is it's Intuit's desktop-based tax filing software that has been around since the 1990s. ProTax is the cloud-based version of Intuit's tax filing software. The same tax engine is used for both Profile and ProTax, so that tax engine has been around for many years, giving you the assurance that that tax calculations within ProTax are accurate because they are the same that have been used in Profile. So, Catherine, hope that answers your questions. Your question there. There's a lot of additional functionality within ProTax. and a lot of really exciting updates that are coming to ProTax. It's kind of like if you've used QuickBooks Desktop in the past and you're using QuickBooks Online. At first, it seems different, and you're like, I don't know, is this better? But as you start using it, you're like, wow, it's leaps and bounds ahead, and there's so much that you can do. And Intuit has put in a lot of resources into developing ProTax. I was at the Intuit head offices in Toronto a couple months ago, and I saw all of the development that's being done and all of the new features that are coming out. So it's really, really great to see. Okay. John, if I want to file my own company's tax return using ProTax, yes, I believe there is a charge for filing your own company's. You need that subscription, or you can use the OnePay for that. QBOA, the bookkeeping component, is free itself. Yes, that other person, anonymous, is asking, but the T2 does require payment. Okay, so to jump back in, hopefully I got all your questions answered there. Authorize a representative, how to give authorization. So this is just a screenshot on the steps on giving authorization. Number 4 is, what are you authorizing a representative for? Is it a personal, business, non-resident, or trust tax account? So you select that, and then it gives you the ways of getting the authorization. Again, we really encourage the taxpayers to sign up for a CRA My account. And if they have a business, a CRA My Business account. Even if they have a GST number, they will, even if they're a sole proprietor and would be filing a T1 personal tax return, but they need to register for GST, they need to sign up for a CRA My Business account. And I'll talk about today I'll go over that again on how you get authorization. So just again, a screenshot to show you how to get authorization. I won't stay on these screens too long, but I will talk about how to get authorized in ProTax. I covered this yesterday. When you were in the ProTax main dashboard for T1s, you will see your client's tax return that you're working on in the list. For example, this has Link Human and Lee Francis as the tax returns. Under the authorize a representative, you will see the plus sign and an add. That will bring up the screen that allows you to fill out the form for the authorize a representative. You put in the taxpayer's name, their social insurance number. You say you want to authorize. You can also cancel representative access here. This is where that person had, are we using it with the rep ID or the business number? So this is where it gives you the option of either the rep ID or the business number. You fill in the level of authorization. Level 1 is just allowing the CRA to disclose information to you. Level 2 allows you to make changes or request changes on behalf of your client from the CRA. So first step is you fill in the information there. Then you click on the print part because you want to print that form for your client and have them sign it. If you're using Intuit Sign, you can also have them electronically sign that, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later today. But you want to make sure that you get your client to sign that authorization. Very, very important, especially with the Protection of Information Act or whatever it's called in Canada. Once you get that authorization, that signed authorization, then you come back here and you click the accept and transmit button, as you see there. Almost instantaneously, you will gain access to your client's information with the CRA, and that will allow you to also use the autofill my return. So this is the secure CRA service that allows individuals and authorized representatives using certified software such as ProTax to automatically fill in parts of an income tax and benefit return with information that the CRA has available at the time of request. So just be very cognizant of that. You know, I talked about kind of waiting till March, mid-March to file clients' tax returns. That's because the CRA may not have the T4 and T5 information available yet if the employer, say, for example, doesn't transmit that to the CRA until the deadline, which is the end of February. And you can also go back in and autofill my return multiple times. Something to be really cognizant of that is that you don't end up with multiple instances. So if you're using it multiple times and you are pulling in like a T4, make sure, and I will show you in today's webinar, how you can select the items that are pulled in. Okay. Jordanos is talking. Can we do it with the business number? Yes, that I hope you saw that on that screen where it has the business number. Lorette, I worked with an accountant through her firm as well, so the authorizer represent through her ProTax would have to be her rep ID, even if I am doing the return. If it depends who's preparing the tax return. If you want to use the represent a client and they autofill the return, that will only be accessible to the person who is pulling the information and is an authorized representative. So you want to be cognizant and cautious of that. Okay, so where do you access this? When you are in a client's tax return, here we are in Chris Wells 2023 T1. In the return actions dialog box or the selection box with a drop down, you click that. You will see there at the top, it has CRA autofill my return. That is what will bring you into starting the autofill my return. On the left-hand side, what it does is at first, as soon as you click that, you will need to log into the CRA portal using either your sign-in partner, that's the banking partner that you use to sign into the CRA's portal, or your CRA login, if you've created a CRA login. That lets you into what the CRA's site is to say, okay, now we will start bringing the information to you. You will see a dialog box then pop up like the one on your right because you're requesting this tax information for a client. In this screenshot, it's showing that it's 2021 tax information, and it will list the client's social insurance number to make sure that you're requesting the correct information. Once you click next on that, it connects with the CRA portal. You will see a successfully connected window pop up in your browser. If you're having errors, sometimes I suggest cleaning your the cache of your browser or opening up a incognito window. If for some reason it's not connecting successfully, restarting your computer, doing a cache clear. 9 times out of 10, you'll see the successfully connected, or 99 times out of 100. Once it connects, it will pop up a dialog box that is like the one on the right here, the CRA autofill my return. This gives you the summary of the client's data that the CRA has that is ready to import. So this is where you will look at each of these items and say, do you want to import it or not? So you have the ability to choose which information you're importing. So again, if you've done the service a couple times or multiple times for a client and you've already pulled in the information, you don't want to have duplicate slips or information. So you want to uncheck things that you've already imported or delete those slips on ProTax before re-importing if it's new or updated, amended information that you're getting. Once the information has been imported, then within the forms selection of your client's tax return, you will see the option that is the data import summary. This tells you all of the information in the slips that have been imported through the autofill my return window. So it's a great area to see everything that has been imported for your clients. There is also the T1 review area of the form selection. So this is a really great area if you want to compare the current year T1 to that of a prior year. The T1 is where you will do that. So to access that, of course, you open an existing return. you select the T1 review option under that forms section. You click the area of the T1 that you'd like to review. In here, we see the total income, net income, taxable income, etc. And then that'll allow you to compare the current year return to the prior year return. Also, we'll give you either the dollar amount that's changed from the current to the prior, as well as the percentage change. So if you're doing some analytical information, really handy to do that. And that's a great high level thing to do for clients to kind of say, oh, why is this different from last year? And by how much is it different? Or what's the percentage? So that can kind of like give you indications to something might be missing, something might be incorrect. Gives you a really good high level access. And again, to access any of the ProTax help, it's that blue bubble that will always appear at the bottom right-hand side for you. Alicia's asking if you have to do a 2023 return, how do you choose which year you are doing a tax return for? When you are starting a tax return, it will ask you which year you're using. Actually, I think it might actually even be in this next slide because we're going to be talking about linked returns. So that is linking like a spousal return to your ProTax. So yeah, right in here, Alicia, whether you're creating just a single person's tax return or you're doing linked returns, this is where it will ask you which tax year you are doing. So in this case, when we are working on linked returns, from your client list, you will create a return. When that window opens, you select the tax year, you enter the client's name, then you will click on a little plus and blue area that says link a spouse. That is where you enter the partner's name and the marital status. You can then name the return whatever you want to. I would say either use your firm's naming convention or name it something that makes a lot of sense to you. And then you will click on cancel. Okay, Anonymous is saying, I've got a question here. If one has a 2024 ProTax, does that include previous years from 2018? I think you said. If you're asking if it has previous information, yes, there are some forms on there that will carry forward the previous information if you have created those returns in Profile or in ProTax. I think that answers your question. Ability to file such returns. You do have the ability to file previous year tax returns as well. Okay, so once you do that, you will see something that looks like on the right. Something that ProTax has now included is the coloring of tax returns. If you don't see the tax returns having different colors for the different spouses, you can go into the tax settings area and choose the colors option. I talked about that tax settings area yesterday in yesterday's webinar. It's in the tax settings area of the ProTax Labs. So that gives you the color. I like seeing it because then it's easy to identify which return is which. You will see then at the top for spouses, you have the ability to toggle back and forth with the spouses. So in this example, you've got Francis Wolf and Carla Sands. You can toggle back and forth between those tax returns. So really easy to do that. And because you are working on linked returns, ProTax lets you easily split and optimize the T1. So you can split income, you can optimize different credits and things like that, expense claims for the T1, because you want to be able to save your clients the most income tax dollars that you can. ProTax allows you to do optimization in various ways. So things like splitting investment income, looking at donation slips. So on the left-hand side here, we see like a T5 investment income. What are you going to be reporting on the spouse's side? What are you going to be reporting on the taxpayer's side? So you enter the amount, in this example, interest from Canadian sources, and how are you going to be splitting it between the spouses? then ProTax automatically allocates that based on the percentage that you're splitting to each spousal tax return. On the right-hand side, we see the charitable donations. So how are you going to be using the charitable donations between your spouses? On the bottom there, kind of that orange area, is it the spouse's own slips? Are you going to be entering the spouse's own and the taxpayer's own and their spouse's slips? Or are you going to be transferring all of the donation credits to the spouse? So a lot of different options that you can work with ProTax in optimizing taxes that way. One thing I forgot to mention that I mentioned yesterday, at the top of the screen, you see how much the current amount owing or the current refund is for each taxpayer. I wonder if I can jump back to quickly show you. Yeah, so if you see at the top here, the taxable income, the balance owing or the refund, and the e-file status, whether it's eligible or not eligible, that's where you see. So when you're looking at optimizing these tax credits, you can look at that, pay attention to that to see the maximum tax savings that you're getting for your clients. Other things that you can optimize, you can allocate medical expenses. And when doing that, you can either click the yes radio button to let ProTax allocate the medical expenses, or you can leave the radio button set to no, and you can use the drop-down selector to choose how you want to manually allocate those medical expenses. So a lot of flexibility is built into here on how you want to allocate things. Okay. So our RSP contribution, somebody had asked about, are we going to be talking about RSPs today? Yes. To enter RSP contributions, you will open the RRSP form. So you'll see that in the forms area. You enter the description, the contribution period, and the contribution amount. Now, note that if the contribution was made on behalf of a spouse, you enter the amount in the rightmost column. And then just remember to scroll down to the form, or scroll down on this form to confirm the deduction limit calculated by ProTax, or you can enter that deduction limit yourself from the notice of assessment. So if you've done the autofill my return, you may see that deduction limit automatically populated by ProTax. If you need to change that, you can enter that directly into option 1 from the taxpayer's notice of assessment. If that is 0, it doesn't matter how many RSP contribution slips that you're entering, ProTax will not calculate an RSP deduction. So really, really important that you take a look and make sure that the deduction limit, if it is applicable, is higher than what the RSPs are that have been contributed. So if it's 0 or it's lower, then you won't be maximizing that RSP contribution. Okay, somebody's asking what's the difference between TurboTax. That's not covered in today's webinar because we're talking about ProTax in today. Okay, so jumping to pension splitting. A really handy tool for splitting a pension income between taxpayers. So here is a summary report. We have Harold and Mantha. They have the opportunity to split Mantha's pension income. So as you can see there, Mantha has pension income, and we have the opportunity to split that between herself and Harold because Harold has a lower amount of income. As we can see, Harold has $21,500 of income. And Mantha has $120,000. So we want to try and split that pension income of Mantha's to optimize tax savings between the two of them. Okay, so in the T1032, we can quickly calculate the optimum pension transfer, splitting that pension income. To do that, we navigate to the pensioners tax return. So in our case here, we've got Mantha, who's the pension income. We can use the quick bar. I talked about the quick bar in yesterday's webinar. That's the bar at the top that has the go to. We can use that to open this T1032. We will click the pensioner checkbox, and then we click the pension worksheet icon. So when we are in the pension worksheets area, it has the left pane of it has 3 different columns, because you can see the left-hand side and then the right side with the graphics, as well as some additional information on the splitting. The left-hand pane has 3 different columns. So the first column shows the existing status. So that's before you do any transfer of the pension income. The second displays the suggested transfer. So that is using the pension optimizing tool. And then the third lets you calculate your own transfer amount. So as we can see at the bottom there, we have the combined net benefit of each method. So obviously on the zero transfer, the combined net benefit is 0 because nothing's been transferred, obviously. The right pane features the chart that displays the impact of varying transfer scenarios. So you can transfer various amounts of pension income, and it shows what the taxes scenarios are in each of those to kind of give you a good graphical information. In the right-hand side, once you accept the worksheet's suggested transfer amount, or you're entering your own preferred amount, you click Optimize. And that's all there is to it. It optimizes the pension splitting income for your taxpayers. Okay, so we'll talk about dependents. We talked about linking spousal returns. Very easy to link a spouse as well as a dependent. So I talked about the spousal return where we have the blue plus and then the link a spouse, as you can see on the left-hand side there. ProTax also lets you link multiple tax files together, such as dependents, things that you want to do, like with T2202As, things like that. So what you will do is you will enter the dependents slips, things like a T4 or 2202A form. Is it 2202? Yeah, 2202A. Then you will open up the parent's tax return and you click on the Manage Linked Returns blue area. Then you select Link Another Return. You will then choose the relationship. So in this instance, the select relationship on the right-hand side is dependent. You select the client and you select the return. After doing that, then you click on the Add Dependent to return. Then you will see, in this case, we have the 2 spouses, Francis Wolf and Carla Sands. Now we have a third toggle added to the top, who is Charlie in this case. That is the dependent. That dependent has now been linked as part of this family's ProTax returns. So really easy to see and to jump back and forth, to click back and forth between those tax returns. When you are in the parents T1, you can open up then the dependent form in that forms list on the left-hand side. Choose a dependence relationship. In that, ProTax will then optimize the family return and allocate things. For example, the tuition transfers to the eligible parent. As we can see here on the screenshot, the tuition amount transferred from a child or grandparent on line 32,400 is $5,000. Okay, so doing more with ProTax. We talked about client letters yesterday, so I won't go into that in much depth today, but just again, the ability to do client letters. And remember the importance, like I talked about yesterday, of having an engagement letter with your clients. Printing client letters. So again, we're talking a little bit more today about the return actions area. So that's where you can print forms and letters. And really, really important to note, anytime you're communicating with your clients over email, you want to password protect any documents that you're sending, especially those that include sensitive client information. Protax includes the ability to automatically password protect those PDFs that you are sending to your clients. So that's shown on the dialog box on the right-hand side there. I talked yesterday about adding attachments. Again, very, very useful and handy part of Protax. Any documents that you want to attach for your client, those sit within that Protax return, and you can access those from anywhere in the world at any time of day. So anything that is relevant to you creating or using your client's tax return, any kind of information. If you've got client notes that they've sent to you that you've taken, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If there's like T4s, slips, medical slips, donation slips, things like that. If you want to include those in that client's tax return, you can attach those documents and they will sit there so that if you ever need to access them, they are linked directly to the client's return. They're not uploaded to the CRA. They just sit there for your use so that you or any one of your team members can see. And it's very easy to upload documents. I talked about that yesterday. Okay, I'm going to talk about the Express Notice of Assessment. The Express Notice of Assessment is an official document and a secure CRA service that allows individuals and authorized representatives to view the Notice of Assessment in their software, such as Protax, immediately after the return has been received and processed by the CRA. So it gives you an idea immediately what the CRA is processing on that client's tax return. CRA tends to review, from what I've heard, client tax returns in the fall following the tax filing season. So they may review certain areas and ask for review documentation, et cetera, et cetera. But this gives an instantaneous notice of assessment, such on, what balance is owing on that return. If there was a balance previously, it'll be added to this current balance, et cetera, et cetera. One thing, so to be able to enable that, you navigate to the taxpayer personal information form on that forms area of Protax. You click the ENOA, Express Notice of Assessment radio button on the Do You Want Preparer to get an electronic notice of assessment. I've now included this screenshot as well as the next one. Because it's really, there tends to be confusion on what the ENOA does. So it's an official document from the CRA. Here I've highlighted the Notice of Assessment provides a complete account summary with the result of the assessed return showing, this is the Express Notice of Assessment, showing the refund, a zero balance or balance owing, the tax assessment summary, explanation of any changes or other information, and the RSP or PRPP deduction limit statement. It may also include things like home buyer's plan, lifelong learning plan, and the newer first home savings account. Very important to note this. Please note this and take a screenshot of this screen. When your client selects the option to have their notice of assessment or reassessment made available electronically to you by completing that part of Form T183, Part E, that's the one that you are entering, the CRA will not send you or your client a paper copy of the notice of assessment or reassessment. Very important to note that. The CRA in general is moving away from sending notice of assessments in the mail. That is why we encourage your clients to have a CRA My account, because there is that handy area of that is the mail area. That is a great place for your client and for you to see any mail items that the CRA has sent to your client, whether it be the notice of assessment, express notice of assessment, anything throughout the year. So I encourage clients to get used to accessing this My Account portal so that they can see their any communication that the CRA has with them. Okay, getting back to the return actions. Do you want to print T1 in its full? Need to use the CRA's autofill my return, which we talked about. Want to return back to your work papers if you've used those, or import a T2125. The return action area covers all of that. You can also share this returns with members of your team who are accessing it through QBOA. You can also export ProTax returns to Profile. So if for some reason you need to export that to the desktop-based tax software that Intuit has, as well, you can start a T3 from a T1. And just note, when you've created an income tax return through ProTax, at the bottom, this is the only place that you can delete a tax return. You can't delete it from the dashboard, the list of all the tax returns. There's no way to delete it from there. I think that's to ensure that you don't accidentally delete tax returns. You actually have to go into the tax return itself and delete the return from there. Okay, we've got less than 15 minutes left. I'm going to talk about the T2125 from QuickBooks Online Accountant. This is the profit and loss statement for your self-employed clients that need to file the T2125 business activities form on their T1 personal tax return. When your clients are using, with your clients that are using QuickBooks Online, it's really easy to create the T2125, map it, and have it automatically import into ProTax. Wasma is asking, T2125 is something like business loss and profit, which, yes, that is correct. How can it be auto-filed? It is filed as part of the T1 personal tax return. So we're jumping back in this screen to our books to tax. So we are in a client's QuickBooks Online books to tax area. Again, it includes those three areas: the books review, which is the monthly or periodic review, the work papers, which is the year-end review that you do for your clients, and the income tax area. On the income tax area, it allows you to map the chart of accounts to the T2125 area of that client's tax return. Very super handy and time-saving function that's built within work papers and ProTax. Once you've mapped those chart of accounts, you don't have to do that year to year unless you have changes to the chart of accounts, such as additions, like new accounts that you've added, for example, to a client's chart of accounts. When you are mapping, it's really easy. In this case, we've got office expenses, and you just map it to whatever line you want to that makes. So you can map it, you can remap it, really easy to do that within the mapping area of the income tax. I will also talk about the use of home expenses and the automobile expenses within the T2125. The use of home expenses maps correctly. It maps directly to the 2125. When you are doing that, you have to allocate the percentage of the home office. Well, I think I've got a screenshot on that. In the auto expenses, it allows you to map that, but it does not appear in ProTax. So really important to talk about that and mention that because of the way the CRA has the auto expenses forms within, and you may need you may have multiple automobiles, et cetera, et cetera. There are also additional amounts that don't necessarily happen in the T2125, such as liability lines. You can still map these, but you won't see these in the T2125 of your ProTax client's tax return. Okay, so to work with the T2125, you click on the Start Return in ProTax. When you click that button, that allows you to start the return automatically within ProTax based on the information that you have in your work papers. You'll want to do that after you've mapped all the accounts and you're ready to go and start the client's tax return. So from the Income Tax tab, you click Start Return in ProTax. When the T1 opens in ProTax, you navigate to the T2125, and you will see that QBOA has correctly exported and mapped accounts in parts 3 and 4 of the T2125. So that's the income, that's the cost of goods sold, and the expenses area. Again, to note, it will fill in the different business use of home expenses. The area that you have to fill in is that area of home used for business versus the total area of home. So you want to it will fill in the full amounts. So that's the full amounts for those expenses for the year. Once you fill in those two areas there, it will allocate all of those amounts based on the percentage of the office area for the home. Lorette is asking if mapped T2125 amounts can be adjusted prorated. Yes, exactly. Yep, that is correct. Okay, so again, talking about the automobile expenses, this is where it does not fill it in for you automatically. ProTax uses the form called Biz Auto to track vehicle expenses. You must use a separate Biz Auto form for each vehicle that is used by the business owner. Because QBOA cannot track multiple vehicles, you do have to manually enter vehicle expenses in ProTax. So you can use the quick bar to open Biz Auto, then click Details. Note that I'm talking about the quick bar a lot. It is so handy and a very easy way to access information. Then at the top of the form, you choose the T2125 number 1 form as a designated form for the vehicle expenses. You choose the percentage allocation of vehicle expenses to transfer to the T2125. In this example, if we are allocating 100%, so that column there, 100% of the vehicle expenses to the T2125. So if you've got multiple, then you'd allocate various percentages. And that's where you can scroll down then and enter vehicle description and mileage details. And then this is an area that you do have to manually enter the vehicle operating expenses. ProTax will then automatically prorate them based on the percentage of business use. Okay, so just a quick thing on colors and indicators. This is a really important screen. Purple, if you see something with a purple bar at the right-hand side, that's a cell that has been carried forward from a previous tax return in ProTax. If it's red, it's a cell that has been overridden. So that's a calculated cell by the ProTax engine that has been overridden. To delete an overridden cell, you can either go into the auditor, which I talked about yesterday, and or you can clear the contents of that cell and then tab out. Again, blue is the one that's calculated by the ProTax engine. To go to the source to see where a calculation, an amount comes from, you can click on that little arrow and it takes you to the source, then you can toggle back. So it's a really handy way to see where the source comes from. Yesterday, I talked about e-filing. Really important to be able to e-file for your client's tax returns. You need to get authorized to e-file as well. It opened up yesterday, so built into ProTax is the ability to e-file. I talked about Intuit Sign. That is the ability to get electronic signatures from your clients for certain forms within ProTax included at no charge with ProTax. So really easy way to get into its side, to get your clients to electronically sign tax return or forms. And you can set up reminders that automatically go out. It's a really great system that is, again, at no charge. If you want to see the status of all of the client signatures that are happening, you go into the main dashboard of ProTax and click on the e-signature area. Again, I talked about ProTax resources yesterday, just showing these to you again. They frequently asked questions. You can go into the What's New section at the top of ProTax in the dashboard. And again, some events and webinars. I am going to go in very quickly to show you the area over these last few minutes. So here we are in QuickBooks Online Accountant. This is our client listing, so our client database. We are not in ProTax yet. We're just in our clients area. If we want to access the books to tax, if we want to access ProTax directly, we just click on that and we can access whatever module we wanted directly from there. It will take us to the ProTax dashboard. If we want to go to the books to tax, for example, say we want to do Craig's Landscaping. This is the QuickBooks Online account for Craig's Landscaping. So now we're jumping into the client bookkeeping account. Sejin, while it's doing that, I'll answer Sejin's question. Can ProTax do T1 refiling? Yes. It's an excellent service to be able to refile if you're adjusting clients' tax returns. ProTax has the ability to do refiling. John is asking, oh, it looks like Luke's answering John's question. And Alicia is asking about changing the status of a client in the T1 personal list. Luke, if you don't mind answering that. Okay, in the last couple of minutes, I'll take you through. So here we are in the QuickBooks Online area of Craig's Landscaping. That is where you will see the books to tax. So that is how you prep the year end, the work papers for Craig's Landscaping. Here we're at tax year 2023. Talks about, it always looks through which transactions have been accepted. Different year-end tasks, documents, attaching documents, again, reviewing and adjusting at year-end and doing financial statements. In the income tax area, this is where we do the mapping to the T2125. We can also, if our client has a corporate tax return, we can do it there, but we just select T2125. Here we have, for example, National Bank checking that hasn't been assigned a tax line yet. Very easy to map it. So we can look at whatever we want to. That'll be in cash. Oh, sorry. We don't need it because it's not a corporate tax return. Let's look at something. Do we have something down here that is... Oh, they've all been mapped. So let's assume, I know it's bank, but let's assume that this is office expenses. So we would just click on that. It would map it to the office expenses area of the T2125. From there, we click Start Return in ProTax. It jumps us into the ProTax environment and imports those Giphy amounts for that T2125 return or schedule. Here we're looking at the tax year. It has pulled in that client. We can name it to whatever we want to. Craig Landscaping 25 2024 return, whatever you want to call it. Here we see the different amounts. So here's where we've got what's going to go into the T2125. We can go back to work papers if we're like, oh, something looks incorrect, or we can click continue. From there, it creates the new return for us in ProTax, and then we're directly into our client's tax return there. Just something quickly to report or to talk about the e-signatures. If we want to do the e-signatures from here, That's where we can get the e-signatures from our clients. We always want to look at the auditor and clear all of these items when we are preparing a client's tax return. Here's the authorized rep form that I talked about, and just your basic navigation. We are at time. We're actually 1 minute over, so I'm going to leave it there for today. Hope you've learned a lot today. I am teaching these webinars again in March, so hope to see you in March as an extension for what you've learned today. Thank you so much for attending today. Don't forget to get your CPD credits, and we'll see you next time. I'm Jason Hasty. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.